Fighting with the swords, gone. Playing with the brain, on. Let's play Giraffe Chess Hattrick League Season 3.
International Giraffe Chess Federation presents Hattrick League Season 3 between 10 Proddatur teams. Hello everyone, welcome to India's new 68 squad Giraffe Chess Academy Proddatur, and welcome to the live telecast of no draws, no resigns, only win or lose in just 70 moves Giraffe Chess Hattrick League 2024 Season 3. Let us watch Giraffe Chess Hattrick League 34th match between Proddatur Rhinos versus Proddatur Gladiators team. Each team consists of 3 players. Whoever team all outs opponent all 3 players is the match winners. Let us see the toss at the center of the court.
So head is the call for the Proddatur Gladiators. So tail, toss won by the Proddatur Rhinos. So what you select, right side or back side?
And in toss, Proddatur Panthers team, they won the toss and opted to play on white side. And here is the both teams lineup. For Proddatur Rhinos team, Mohit is the opener and Charantej is the second player, and Ganesh comes to play as third player. And for Proddatur Gladiators team, Supyan is the opener and Ishwar is the second player, and Jay Bhargav comes to play as third player. Now, let us watch first game of the match between Proddatur Gladiators team opening player Sufyan versus Proddatur Rhinos team opening player Mohit Reddy. Let us see among these 2 players who will win this game and who will do hat-trick and who will be the hat-trick hero of today's great match. Let us watch. Let us move on to the court. Little Scholar awardee Proddatur Gladiators team opening player Sufyan is ready to play on white side. Let us see on other side of the court. Best Scholar awardee Proddatur Rhinos team opening player Mohit Reddy is ready to play on black side.
Now we can see both players are ready to start game 1 of the match. Black side player Mohit Reddy is ready to hit the clock. Yes, he hit the clock. Game 1 started.
Knight to f3, pawn to e6. Giraffe to e3, pawn to f5, pawn to h3, pawn to e5, giraffe to h2, pawn to h6, knight capture pawn at e5, pawn to d6, knight to g6, rook to h7, knight capture bishop at f8, king capture knight at f8, pawn to h4, queen capture pawn at h4, giraffe to e3, queen to e7, pawn to g3, knight to f6, giraffe capture knight at f6, queen capture giraffe at f6, pawn to e3, pawn to d5, bishop to d3, giraffe to b6, pawn to f3, pawn to d4, pawn to e4, giraffe to g5, pawn to g4, pawn capture pawn at e4, bishop capture pawn at e4, bishop capture pawn at g4, pawn capture bishop at
Now
g4,
Mohit immediately
queen
moved
to
his
f2
queen
and
to
check to
f2
white king,
and said
and
check
it's
to
a
white king.
checkmate.
It is not only check, it is a checkmate win to Mohit. What a superb checkmate win to Mohit. Sufyan out. Proddatur Gladiators team opening player Sufyan out. Mohit, with this win, he won the first game and still need 2 more wins to do Hattrick and become Hattrick hero of today's great match.
Let us watch second game of the match between Proddatur Rhinos team opening player Mohit Reddy versus Proddatur Jaguars team second player Ishwar. Let us see among these two players who will win this game and who will do hat-trick and who will be the hat-trick hero of today's great match. Among these two players, Mohit Reddy already won the first game and now playing for winning second game. Let us watch what will happen. Let us move on to the court. Best Scholar awardee Proddatur Rhinos team opening player Mohit Reddy is ready to play on right side. Let us see on other side of the court. One-time hat-trick hero, Best Scholar awardee Proddatur Gladiators team second player Ishwar is ready to play on black side.
Now we can see both players are ready to start game 2 of the match. Black side player Ishwar is ready to hit the clock. Yes, he hit the clock. Game 2 started.
Pawn to e3, pawn to e6, queen to f3, knight to c6, knight to c3, pawn to a6, giraffe to d3, knight to b8, giraffe to g4, pawn to f6, pawn to e4, pawn to e5, giraffe to d5 and check to black king, king to e7, pawn to g4, giraffe to e6, queen to d1, bishop to d9, giraffe to e2, giraffe to d6, knight to d5 and check to black king, king to e9, knight to c3, giraffe capture knight at c3, giraffe capture giraffe at c3, knight to c6, pawn to f4, knight to h6, pawn capture pawn at e5, knight capture pawn at e5, pawn to d4, knight capture pawn at g4, giraffe to f5, king to f7, bishop capture knight at h6, knight capture bishop at h6, queen to e2, pawn to g6, giraffe to g2, pawn to b6, pawn to e5, pawn to a5, queen to f2, bishop to e6, bishop to c4, pawn to d5, pawn capture pawn at f6, bishop capture pawn at f6, bishop to e2, bishop to b7, giraffe to d3, giraffe captured giraffe at d3, bishop captured giraffe at d3, rook to e8 and check to white king, knight to e2, pawn to c5, rook to f1, king to g7, giraffe to f4 and check to black king, king to g8, pawn capture pawn at c5, bishop to h4, bishop to b5, bishop capture queen at f2, rook capture bishop at f2, rook to e4, rook to d1, knight to g4, rook to g2, knight to e3, knight to g3, knight capture rook at g2 and check to white king, king to f2, knight capture giraffe at f4, knight capture rook at e4, queen to h4 and check to white king, knight to g3, knight to h3 and check to white king, king to f3, queen to f4 and check to white king, king to e2, queen to f2 and check to white king, king to d3, queen capture pawn at h2, king to d4, queen to f2 and check to white king, king to e5, queen capture knight at g3 and check to white king, king to e6, queen to g4 and check to white king, king to e7, bishop to d9, rook capture pawn at d5, queen to e4 and check to white king, king to d7, queen capture rook at d5 and check to white king, king to e7, knight to g5, pawn to c4,
Now Ishwar
queen to
immediately
e6,
moved his queen to e6 and said check to white king. It is not only check, it is a checkmate win to Ishwar. What is superb checkmate win to Ishwar. Mohit out. Proddatur Rhinos team opening player Mohit out. And a great disappointment, Mohit, he lost the hat-trick chance. Whereas Ishwar, he got the hat-trick chance.
Now, let us watch third game of the match between Proddatur Gladiators team second player Ishwar versus Proddatur Rhinos team second player Charan Tej. Let us see among these two players who will win this game and who will do hat-trick and who will be the hat-trick hero of today's great match. Among these two players, Ishwar already won first game and now playing for winning second game. Let us see what will happen. Let us move on to the court. One-time hat-trick hero, best scholar awardee, Proddatur Gladiators team second player Ishwar is ready to play on white side. Let us see on other side of the court Proddatur Rhinos team second player Charan Tej is ready to play on black side.
Now we can see both players are ready to start game 3 of the match. Black side player Charan Tej is ready to hit the clock. Yes, he hit the clock. Game 3 started.
Pawn to e3, pawn to e5, pawn to h3, bishop to c5, knight to f3, knight to f6, knight capture pawn at e5, knight to d5, bishop to c4, queen to f6, knight to g4, queen to f5, pawn to b4, bishop to b6, giraffe to c3, knight to b4, knight to a3, bishop to e7, knight to e5, pawn to d5, bishop to d3, queen to f6, bishop to e2, bishop to f5, bishop to d3, bishop capture bishop at d3, knight capture bishop at d3, queen to f5, knight capture knight at b4, bishop capture knight at b4, giraffe to f3, bishop capture knight at a3, pawn capture bishop at a3, knight to c6, queen to e2, castling at queen side, pawn to g4, queen to f6, giraffe to f4, rook to e8, giraffe to c5, Rook to d6. Giraffe capture queen at f6. Pawn capture giraffe at f6. Pawn to c4. Knight capture pawn at d4. Queen to d1. Knight to c6. Pawn capture pawn at d5. Knight to a5. Queen to a4. Pawn to b6. Queen capture rook at e8 and check to black king. Rook to d8. Queen capture giraffe at e9. Giraffe to e6. Giraffe capture giraffe at e6. Pawn capture giraffe at e6. Queen capture pawn at e6 and check to black king. Rook to d7. Queen to e8 check to black king. Rook to d8. Queen to e6 and check to black king. King to d9. Pawn to d6. Pawn capture pawn at d6. Queen capture pawn at f6. Pawn to d5. Queen to f7 and check to black king. King to c8. Queen to f5 and check to black king. Rook to d7. Pawn to e4. Pawn to d4. Bishop to g5. Pawn d3. Queen to f8 and check to black king. King to c7. Bishop to f4 and check to black king. King to c6. Rook to c1 and check to black king. King to b5. Queen to b4 and check to black king. King to a6. Pawn to a4. Knight to c6. Queen to b5 and check to black king. King to b7. Queen capture knight at c6 and check to black king. King to a6. Queen capture rook at d7. King to a5. Rook to b1. Pawn to b5. Bishop to c7 and check to black king. King capture pawn at a4. Queen capture pawn at b5 and check to black king. King to a3.
Now Ishwar immediately moved
Queen to
his queen
b3
to
and check to
b3
black
and
king,
said
and
check
it's
to
a
black
checkmate.
king. It is not only check, it is a checkmate win to Ishwar. What a superb checkmate win to Ishwar. Charan Tej out. Proddatur Rhinos team second player Charan Tej out. And with this win, Ishwar he won continuously 2 games and still need one more win to do hat-trick and become hat-trick hero of today's great match.
Now, let us watch fourth game of the match between Proddatur Gladiators team second player Ishwar versus Proddatur Rhinos team last player Ganesh. Let us see who will win this game. If Ishwar wins this game, it will be hat-trick to the Ishwar. He will be the hat-trick hero of today's great match and his Proddatur Gladiators team won the match. If Ganesh wins this game, match will be tied with 2-all games and go for fifth game for result. Let us move on to the court. One-time hat-trick hero, best scholar awardee, Proddatur Gladiators team second player Ishwar is ready to play on black side. Let us see on other side of the court. 4 times hat-trick hero, best scholar awardee, Proddatur Rhinos team last player Ganesh is ready to play on white side.
Okay. Now we can see both players are ready to start. Game 4 of the match. Black side player Ishwar is ready to hit the clock. Yes, he hit the clock. Game 4 started.
Pawn to e4. Pawn to e6. Pawn to d4. Knight to f6. Queen to e2. Pawn to h6. Pawn to e5. Knight to d5. Bishop to d2. Pawn to d6. Pawn to f4. Pawn capture pawn at e5. Pawn capture pawn at e5. Giraffe to c6. Knight to c3. Giraffe to f5. Queen to f2. Bishop to e7. Knight capture knight at d5. Pawn capture knight at d5. Pawn to c3. Knight to c6. Giraffe to d3. Knight to a5. Giraffe to g4. Knight to c4. Bishop capture knight at c4. Giraffe capture bishop at c4. Queen capture pawn at f7 and check to black king. King to d7. Queen capture pawn at d5 and check to black king. King to e8. Queen capture giraffe at c4. Rook to f8. Giraffe to h7 and check to black king. King to d9. Knight to f3. Giraffe to h8. Knight to h4. Bishop capture knight at h4 and check to white king. Pawn to g3. Bishop to e7. Pawn to d5. Pawn to c6. Pawn capture pawn at c6. Pawn capture pawn at c6. Rook to d1. Bishop to e6. Giraffe capture bishop at e6 and check to black king. King to e8. Giraffe to h7 and check to black king. King to d9. Bishop to f4. Queen capture rook at d1 and check to white king. King capture queen at d1. Rook to d8 and check to white king. King to c2. King to c8. Giraffe to e3. Bishop to e5. Pawn to h4. Bishop capture bishop at f4. Pawn capture bishop at f4. Giraffe to e7. Queen to e6 and check to white black king. Rook to b7. Rook to d1. Rook to d8. Rook capture rook at d7. Rook capture rook at d7. Queen capture pawn at c6 and check to black king. Rook to c7. queen to e8 and check to black king, king to b7, giraffe to e6 and check to black king, king to b6,
Now Ganesh immediately moved his
queen to
queen to
b5 and check
b5
to
and
black king,
said check to
and
black
it's a
king.
checkmate.
It is not only check, it is a checkmate win to Ganesh. What is superb checkmate win to Ganesh? Ishwar out. Proddatur Gladiators team second player Ishwar out, and Ganesh he won the first game. A great disappointment to Ishwar. He lost the hat-trick chance.
Let us watch most important match winning deciding fifth game of the match between Proddatur Gladiators team last player Jaya Reddy versus Proddatur Rhinos team last player Ganesh. So far, both teams won 2 games. Now, whoever team player wins this fifth game, they are the match winners. Let us watch what will happen. Let us move on to the court. Best Scholar awardee Proddatur Gladiators team last player Jay Reddy is ready to play on white side. Let us see on other side of the court. 4 times Hattrick hero, Best Scholar awardee Proddatur Rhinos team last player Ganesh is ready to play on black side.
Now we can see both players are ready to start. Game 5 of the match. Black side player Ganesh is ready to hit the clock. Yes, he hit the clock. Game 5 started.
Pawn to e4, pawn to c5, bishop to c4, pawn to e6, knight to f3, pawn to d5, bishop to e2, pawn capture pawn at e4, knight to g1, knight to h6, pawn to f3, pawn capture pawn at f3, giraffe capture pawn at f3, pawn to g6, bishop to b5 and check to black king, giraffe to c6, bishop capture giraffe at c6, knight capture bishop at c6, knight to c3, pawn to a6, pawn to d3, bishop to g7, bishop to d2, castling at king side, knight to e2, pawn to e5, giraffe to e0, knight to d4, knight capture knight at d4, pawn capture knight at d4, knight to e2, rook to e8, castling at king side, queen to c7, bishop to f4, bishop to e5, bishop capture bishop at e5, queen capture bishop at e5, pawn to c3, queen capture knight at e2, queen capture queen at e2, rook capture queen at e2, rook to e1, bishop to g4, pawn to h3, rook capture rook at e1 and check to white king, rook capture rook at e1, bishop, bishop capture pawn at h3, pawn capture bishop at h3, giraffe to f6, pawn capture pawn at d4, pawn capture pawn at d4, rook to e4, king to g7, rook capture pawn at d4, knight to f5, rook to d7, king to h6, rook capture pawn at f7, rook to e8, giraffe to h1, knight to g3, giraffe to g4, king to g5, giraffe to c3, knight to e2 and check to white king, king to g2, knight capture giraffe at c3, pawn capture knight at c3, king to f5, giraffe capture pawn at h7, rook to e3, giraffe to g4, king to e6, king to f7, f2, rook capture pawn at h3, rook capture pawn at b7, king to f5, rook to b4, pawn to a5, rook to a4, pawn to g5, giraffe to d5, pawn to g4, rook capture pawn at g4, king to e5, rook to d4, giraffe to c7, rook to e4 and check to black king, king capture giraffe at d5, pawn to c4 and check to black king, king to c5, pawn to a3, giraffe to b4, king to e2, rook to h2 and check to white king, king to f3, rook to rook to h3 and check to white king, king to f4, rook to h5, king to g4, rook to h6, king to f5, rook to d6, pawn to d5 and check to black king, king to c6, pawn to d5 and check to black king, king to c5, pawn to a4, giraffe to c1, rook to e6, king to d4, rook capture rook at d6, king to d3, king to f6, king to d2, king to f7, king to t1, king to f8.
Now we can see Ganesh is just one step away to win
King
by
to
crowning.
E0.
Yes, he moved his king to e0 and won the game by crowning. What a superb crowning win to Ganesh. Jay Bhargav out. Gladiators team last player Jay Bhargav out. And with this out, Gladiators team all out and lost the match. Whereas Ganesh, he won the very crucial fifth game and makes his team won the match.
Giraffe Chess Hattrick League 2024 Season 3 Match number 34 Proddatur Rhinos vs Proddatur Gladiators match scorecard. Game 1 Proddatur Rhinos player Mohit outs Proddatur Gladiators player Sufyan by checkmate in 18 moves. In Game 2 Proddatur Gladiators player Ishwar outs Proddatur Rhinos player Mohit by checkmate in 50 moves. And again in Game 3, Proddatur Gladiators player Ishwar outs Proddatur Rhinos player Charantej by checkmate in 47 moves. Up to now, Proddatur Gladiators player Ishwar won continuously 2 games. Now Ishwar is on Hattrick, but in Game 4, Proddatur Rhinos player Ganesh outs Proddatur Gladiators Ishwar by checkmate in 39 moves. Good game by Ganesh and bad luck to Ishwar. And in Game 5, Proddatur Rhinos player Ganesh outs Proddatur Gladiators player Jay Bhargav by crowning in 60 moves. So this is the 5 games match between, but Ishwar, he lost a hat-trick opportunity. Otherwise he will be the hat-trick hero. And finally Proddatur Rhinos team won the match by all-out Proddatur Gladiators team in 5 games. And here is the points table of Giraffe Chess Hattrick League 2024 Season 3. Let us see what are the top 4 teams after finishing off 34 matches. Proddatur Cheetahs team with 12 points stands on first position. Proddatur Spartans team with 12 points stands on second position. Proddatur Kings team with 8 points stands on third position. Proddatur Jaguars team with 8 points stands on fourth position. Each team after playing 9 matches, final points are calculated for top 4 positions. Top 4 teams only qualify for the final playoffs.